بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين اللهم صل Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This week's discussion centers on another factor within the modern Palestinian history, and that is the birth of what we call the axis of resistance or al-Muqawama in Lebanon. The axis of resistance or al-Muqawama in Lebanon should not be considered as an independent factor. It is as a consequence of the Zionist plan for the region and constant incursion in the Lebanese territory. Before we discuss this, there are a few factors that I need to mention, and I believe in the past discussion that we have had on Palestine and modern history of Palestine, the dynamic that exists between Palestinian, the factors, the colonial mindset, the Zionist, as well as the Palestinians themselves. The Zionist entity, once they took over Palestine, they have never signed and accepted a peace treaty or at least accepted a geographical boundary that defines them within those boundaries as the ultimate parameters of so-called their states. They have always believed in what they define as floating boundaries. Floating boundaries means a boundary that is not fixed. As they take over other lands, then naturally those lands become part of they consider to be part of the state of the Zionist state, and the new boundaries de facto is constructed. So that factor has always dominated the mindset of the Zionist leaders in Palestine. This issue became problematic with Lebanon because they constantly went into Lebanon, and from 1908, when the Zionist leaders made a proposal and submitted a proposal to the French and the British that they wanted the land of the future state to be up to Litani River, the Zionists have never given up hope that one day Litani River will be the north, at least within the state of what they call the Zionist state. Recently, the blue proposal that was published by the extremist Zionists that underscored the old claim by a number of anti-Zionists that really the plan for the Zionist state is to go from the Nile to the Euphrates widthwise and north up to Turkey, and even a little bit of Turkey to be included within this. So this was published, and if that were to be implemented, literally there is no more any Lebanon, there is no more any Syria, and a large section of Iraq will be taken, northern Arabian Peninsula up to Turkey. This expansion, Sinai Desert, all of these will be included into the ultimate state that they want to establish. But the current crisis in Lebanon goes back to 1932 during the French mandate on Lebanon. They started an election, strangely enough, around the same time, 1932 or 1930s, the British mandate, or the British being in control of Iraq, they started similar kind of election as well in Iraq under Faisal, and trying to establish a new parliament and new representation, etc., etc. So in Lebanon in 1932, French supported an election that in that election no advantages were given to the Shias, literally as if Shias in Lebanon, they did not exist. All political, economic, and social rights within the country were given to the Christian Maronite. And there is a huge debate whether the 1932 election was not rigged in favor of the Maronite or the Christian Maronite. Again, this 1932, in 1943, which is 11 years later, some kind of collective agreement was reached in Lebanon, reducing little bit the power of the Christians, but still no right were given to the Shias in Lebanon. So Shias as if they didn't exist. This was underscored when Marhum Shahid Sadr, Musa Sadr, went to Lebanon, was given the, I think during Marhum Burujirdi or before it, anyway, during Marhum Burujirdi, that he went to Lebanon in 1960s. And he was given the responsibility to become the religious guide for the Shia community. After staying a few weeks or few months, he wrote a report to Ayatollah Burujirdi that the problem with the Shias in Lebanon is far deeper and much more complex than purely religious issues. The Shia community in Lebanon has no representation whatsoever, as if they don't exist. They are being abused by what we call the Iqta'iyyin, the bourgeoisies of the Shia community, the rich ones, that they live in Beirut, and they care less about the south, where most of the Shias are. And they are being abused by the Israelis, by the Maronite, by the Sunnis, by everybody else. So they needed restructure of the Shia community in Lebanon. And because of, he was right, because he knew, because of this force or unequal treatment of the Shias in Lebanon, and the central government not helping them, Shias, if they wanted anything to be secured for them and to gain any right, they drifted towards the Chinese communist, communism, Russian communist, and the leftist parties that existed in Lebanon. Most of the cadre of these parties, the left parties, were Shias. And ultimately, because of participation within these parties, they even gave up on being Shia and became secular or agnostic. They had really very bad security arrangement for the Shias in the south. They were working as hard as possible, but literally laborers for everybody else, but without having to have any political or any social or any economic representation. The government was not, and even their religious affairs were not dealt with. Ayatollah Burujirdi gave the guidelines to or instruction or command to Shahid Musa Sadr that, well, do whatever you can to reorganize the Shia community and revamp, restructure the Shia community in the south. So he began a number of steps by bringing in social, economic, and political leadership, and organizing it by bringing in Majlis al-Shia al-A'la and some other organization. They didn't have hospitals, they didn't have proper schools, they didn't have organizations. So he started an extensive social activity. In the light of protecting, the Israelis used to constantly come into, if you listen to the current debate, the Israelis want to have the freedom to come to Lebanon anytime they want and fly over Lebanon. This was something that was existing in Lebanon before. It was only the existence of Muqawama al-Lubnaniyya in both shapes that did not that prevented them, and they did not allow them, that now they want to revamp it again and bring it back. So during those days, they used to come and move into into Lebanon anytime that they wanted, destroy the southern land, southern Lebanon, and push people out. One of their major goals was to have access to the Litani River. Even if Lebanon is not under their control, they have access to Litani River to drain the river towards northern Israel, where most of the settlements are, and the same position that we have with regard to California being the basket of vegetable, fruit, and everything else for United States. The northern occupied Palestine, all the mustawtanat and the settlements over there were engaged in production of fruit, vegetable for the rest of the country. And this is why they are suffering at the moment, because the mustawtanat and the settlements in the north are not being productive, have been literally turned into ghost towns, only to be supported by Arabs. On a regular basis, hundreds of trucks are filled with produce from these countries and sent to support the Israelis. So Marhum Shahid Musa al-Sadr started doing this, and part of his social and political activity was establishment of the first what they called Harakat al-Mahrumin. Harakat al-Mahrumin was semi-political, semi-military, that these are people that would defend the Shias in the south, and to a degree would prevent the Israelis from constant incursion in Lebanon. In 1976, early 1977, when I went to Lebanon and I went to Sur, it was quite clear that the Israelis had the freedom to use their helicopters and move around Lebanon, and nobody did anything to stop them. So that was something that it was common occurrence on a daily basis, that you are standing and you see that the Israeli helicopter over your head flying, and sometimes sweeping low to frighten people. And Marhum Shahid Sadr, the first thing that he did, based on to establish some kind of this semi-Harakat al-Mahrumin, and supported by some what the first conception of what we have today as Amal, Afwaj al-Muqawama al-Lubnani, the Alif, Mim, and Lam, Amal, Afwaj Muqawama al-Lubnaniyya, so they turned into Amal. He was in charge of it, literally the one in command. But training of these individuals, everything was in secret from 1972, which was the beginning of shaping of Amal, up to 1975. And the training was done by Dr. Marhum Shahid Mustafa Chamran, which used to live in Lebanon at the time, and he was trained by the Palestinians and by the Egyptians at the time. and also by a number of Palestinians that were living in Lebanon. So these organizations helped, and some kind of training were put together. They were extremely tight with regard to money that coming in and weapon. And most of the money that came in was through a grant that was given to Shahid Musa by Ayatollah Gul Paigani. I think at that time about 1 million lira or something Lebanese, and a number of wealthy Lebanese that supported Marhum Shahid Sadr by either purchasing themselves some weapon or providing the support through Dr. Chamran to bring weapons from Romania at the time. So this was, and the presence of Amal, even at the earlier history of it, gave the Shias some kind of power to be able to defend themselves against right-wing extremists that would incur, in addition to the Israelis. And ultimately, when the civil war started in Lebanon, middle of 1970s and up to late 1970s, Amal was part and parcel of the resistance in Lebanon. There was no, at that time, there was no, and worked with Palestinian organizations to do more intensive training. And finally in 1982, I believe, around 1982, with the Israeli incursion into Lebanon, there was a meeting between Jumbalat, representative from Amal, Jumail, and another person, that they negotiated with the Israelis at the time so that a truce will be agreed, and the Israelis would withdraw and at least bombardment would stop. This action led to a number of Lebanese that they were not happy with the idea of negotiating some kind of settlement with the Israelis to withdraw from Amal. This action of withdrawal and separation from Amal came to be known as the beginning of the second axis of resistance, much more powerful, that we have today as the Muqawama al-Lubnaniya Hezbollah. There is a debate, huge debate, as to who was responsible at the beginning. By the way, after the Shahada of Marhum Shahid Sadr, and I use my words quite carefully, I don't believe Marhum Sayyid Musa Sadr is alive. I believe that he has died. All the evidence from Libya that came out clearly indicated that Muammar Gaddafi, within a few days of Musa Sadr going to Lebanon, to Libya, there was an argument between the two regarding the influence of Libya into Lebanon, and he ordered the assassination of Shahid Musa Sadr. Finished. Where they buried him, nobody knows. Some people say they dropped the body in an acid. Whatever it is, that's neither here nor there. But unfortunately, this is one critical issue that I have against Hezbollah, against Amal, that they are still talking as if Shahid Sadr exists. They are not prepared to close the chapter, because it is beneficial for them to keep the memory of Shahid Sadr alive and benefit as the only representative in Lebanon for Shahid Sadr, because he was the one who started Amal in the first place. The new leadership after the Shahada of Marhum Shahid Sadr moved away, particularly with the strong military position of the Hezbollah, moved away, although they still exist. The military component of Amal still exists, but they are operating in the shadow of much more powerful brother that they have in Lebanon, which is Hezbollah. So they all still carry arms, they all have arms. And in some times when there are conflicts, they come to support. In 2006 and 2000, kicking of the Israelis in 2000, and particularly the war in 2006, they stood in full support of Hezbollah against Israelis. But more and more, in the absence of a religious leadership for Amal, Hezbollah took that position, and they became what we call the civil or the political voice for the Muqawamah. So Nabih Berri at the moment is trusted by Hezbollah to negotiate, but they have their own consultation to negotiate and talk about agree any agreement that they have between themselves and others. Now we move, for the benefit of time, because of the time restraint. There is a debate as to who is or who was the main power or the main authority behind the establishment of Hezbollah. Some people say Syrians, other people say others. I used to have, during my days in Najaf, there were 5 or 6 mashayikh and sadat that we knew them, and we used to call them as Young Turks. Young Turks are an expression that was created around the end of the demise of the Ottoman Empire, to refer to a number of army officers that stood up against the Ottoman Khalif and moved Turkey towards much more called democratic and secular. These people were Tawusi, Muhtashimi, Du'ai, the son of Ayatollah Muntaziri, Niknam, and few others. Du'ai was in charge, the elder figure too. The son of Ayatollah Muntaziri, Muhammad Muntaziri, and Du'ai, they were the leaders of these group. Du'ai used to be in charge of the Radio Free Iran that was organized in Baghdad, and he was the one who would go to Baghdad and present program against Iran, against the Shah. Muhammad Muntaziri was the one who would travel around, and his connection with Libya and so on was very strong. When the revolution happened, Muhtashimi, because of his relationship with Marhum Imam Rahmatullah alayh and close relationship with the Imam, was given the responsibility of various positions, but became Iranian ambassador in Syria. Around the end of the war, or middle of the war, with the fall of Khurramshah, there were a number of battalions, Iranian battalions, that were sent to Syria for training, because Hafez al-Assad at the time would provide them with a huge amount of weapons. So Iranians decided by that time, around 1982, there was at least the nucleus for the Hezbollah and Muqawamah al-Lubnaniya in Lebanon had already established, and they decided where they were going to send huge amount of weapon as well as soldiers and so on to Syria to be trained, and then to go to Lebanon and support it. Marhum Imam heard about this story, and this is what Muhtashimi talks about it himself. It's nothing that I made it up. In one of the reports, an interview that he had, he talked about this. And he said, Marhum, suddenly we saw that the sending of military delegation that used to come on a regular basis every day from Iran stopped. I inquired as to why, and then I was told that Marhum Imam has given order that not to send anymore. He had a meeting he went to Tehran with a group of people and had a meeting with Marhum Imam. The result of this meeting was that we have our own soldiers and our own troops training in Syria and coming back to Iran. If there is a war, we as people of Iran can support and provide the backing for our troop and our military personnel. If they travel to Syria and from there to Lebanon, we really don't have a way of supporting them, and we cannot leave them at the mercy of others. Particularly at that time, Americans and French and others were really bombing Lebanon. So no more personnel. These personnel can take a short period of time to go to Lebanon and train these what we call al-Muqawama and resistant movement, train them very quickly and provide them with weapon and financial support, and then come back to Iran. So that was the basis for what we have Hezbollah today. Hezbollah separated from Amal because of that meeting that they had, that Amal participated with Jumblat, Jumail and others to negotiate with the Israelis. And so these people that I'm cutting huge amount of information simply because for the interest of time. Naim Qasim, Sheikh Qasim, that at the moment is the leader of Hezbollah, wrote a book many decades ago regarding the whole resistance, and I think it's called the history, Tarikh al-Muqawama fi Lebanon, something of that nature. Please, if you find the PDF, send it to me because I don't have access to it. I remember reading bits and pieces from the book many years ago. So Naim Qasim wrote a book about Tarikh al-Muqawama and how it evolved. In 1982, 83, the early part of Hezbollah, and how they got involved into military exercises, particularly directly involved with the Israelis. When the Sahayana, they occupied Palestine, they occupied Lebanon, they really did not want to leave Lebanon. Lebanon became another mustawtana, another part, literally another part that they were planning to bring the Zionists in and turn it into a settlement. That plan still exists. People are now, when the government, the Israeli government talked about incursion into Lebanon, people began to put their name down about mustawtanat in southern Lebanon, that they wanted to come in and become the settlers over there. They're doing the same thing for Gaza. Trump's son-in-law is one of the leading advocates for turning Gaza, at least northern Gaza, into settlement of rich people going in, entertainment and everything else. So they really did not want to come out of Lebanon. And it was Hezbollah, the military, with the help of, to a degree, Amal, that they began harassing the Israelis. And when the French and the American withdrew because of the bombing of their compound in Beirut, with the huge loss, Israelis and the Zionist movement in Lebanon became weaker because now we have no American support, no French support, and they began to suffer the losses more and more and more. They withdrew a little bit towards Sur, and then ultimately from Sur to the borderline of what we call the Southern Protectorate, that was under the control of a Christian military officer. And finally, Hezbollah managed to kick them out of Lebanon in 2000. After that, there were a number of Lebanese land, Mazar al-Shab'a and other places that still exist. They are occupied by the Zionists, but the direct confrontation between the Israelis and Hezbollah began, and Hezbollah began to develop itself until the full confrontation with 2006, the War of 33 Days. And after the Israelis were hit, and they were the one for the first time in their history that they went to United Nations for a ceasefire and signing of 1701 resolution that they never implemented. And then we are where we are at the moment regarding the war in Gaza, the war in in Lebanon, etc., etc. Please, as I have mentioned, advised you before, these are critical issues that, particularly for the Lebanese. For the non-Lebanese, it's critical because you need to know about what has happened and how the axis of resistance in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq. We have to talk about axis of resistance in Iraq one day, and Yemen, etc. But the only place that we have direct confrontation possible between the Zionists and the Israeli government with the axis of resistance are in Lebanon and in Syria. Iraq, if they want axis of resistance, or al-Muqawama al-Iraqiyya, if they want to do anything, they have to fly over or send that over Syrian land, since Jordanian land is out of the question. Jordanians have the longest border with the Israelis, but they are mute. They are neutralized. There is nothing they can do about it. And the role of Iran in establishing al-Muqawama al-Iraqiyya and the support for the Syrian government and al-Muqawama al-Lebaniyya for the Iranian members of our group is critical. Go back and read some of these history. Two reports, one by Muhtashimi, the other one by Khosrow Shahi. These are the ones that I strongly recommend for you to read it. But for the Arabic-speaking, Naim Qasim, and there are a number of other books, even by Masih, the Christians of Lebanese. They talk about the history of Lebanon. Inshallah, when the war ends, and like the 2006, this one again, it will be a success for the Muqawama al-Lebaniyya and for all Muqawama, including Yemen and Iraq and Syria and so on. I believe the shape of the Middle East, the dynamic of the Middle East is going to change. So 7th of October 2023 becomes what I call a singular event, militarily as well as politically, where the before and after is completely different. All the hype for the Zionists to move into a land and cleanse the Palestinians and live in peace while they are killing other people, now the war is in their land and in the occupied Palestine. The shape of Middle East is going to change. We will see titanic events taking place after the war, the day after the war in Lebanon comes to an end and Gaza comes to an end, etc., etc. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.